you smell what the truck is cooking?
A Devon Street exclusive.
Obviously, you've got a job outside of football.
Yep.
What is it you're doing?
So I work for a company called EGM, Executive Search and Recruitment. So
Yep.
I'm working across the recruitment industry. So my main area that I look after is sort of more the tech and digital side, as well as doing a bit of sales stuff. So I started that gig probably started last year.
Yep.
I've been in recruitment for sort of 18 months prior, but I started with this company that I'm with now. So
Enjoying it?
yeah, it's great. And the people I work for make it just 10 times better. I've
Yep.
got a fantastic set of colleagues, but also my directors are just, they're amazing bunch of people. So they look after
Excellent.
me a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely all about. I mean, I've had some pretty like average casual jobs over my. I mean, I'm only 23, so you've got a little bit on me, but it's definitely all about. Obviously, you got to enjoy what you're doing, but it's definitely all about the people you work with. Because if you're not enjoying the people you work with, then it just makes it that much harder to rock up there and show your face. So
You spend so much of your life at
Yeah,
work.
exactly.
So you want to be able to have people that you can have fun with and pass the time with
Yeah.
and enjoy it with. And
exactly.
but yeah, no, I'm very lucky.
So that leads into the next thing I sort of want to talk about. Your writing. So has that always been a hobby? Is it something you've sort of gotten into the last like year or two, or what's the story with the writing?
So
No pun intended.
yeah, so I guess growing up, I kind of always had that a little bit more of a natural ability to write. I used to write stories and all this kind of stuff when I was younger, and Mum always encouraged me to sort of follow that a fair bit, but I never really did. Obviously, getting caught up in the footy bubble and all that kind of stuff, I never really got back to it. But I used to jot things down every now and then, things that I'd hear from people, lessons that I'd learn, and it wasn't until I took the year off in 2018 to go overseas, and sounds really tacky and cliche to say that I found myself, because I didn't do that. But I had actually a really tough period. I was in Berlin at the time with one of my best mates.
Very good place.
Awesome place.
Unreal.
And unfortunately, a friend of mine from Adelaide, who I knew through different people, had taken her own life. And one of my best mates, mum, who was just such an awesome person and such a big supporter of me growing up, especially through high school, passed away from breast cancer. And
So this is whilst you were away?
this is while I was away from
Yeah.
home as well, which is obviously completely
tougher.
amplified.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'd been away for about 2 or 3 months at that point as well.
Yeah.
So I'd sort of, that had all happened, and I didn't really, I was sort of trying to, I remember like calling my parents, and I was just like in tears, and I was so like upset, and I was looking up flights to come home, and and they encouraged me just to sort of, hang in there and just wait it out a little bit, because it was obviously, to come back, you'd obviously want to go.
It's a
go
process.
it's just like, and I wanted to be able to go back traveling again, which is going to cost me, stupid
Double.
amounts of money as well.
Yeah,
And
sure.
I think, my mate, particularly in Melbourne, who lost his mum, was going to need me post the funeral and post, the time when all of people were sort of hanging around him.
Yeah.
So I sort of, after I'd sort of composed myself a little bit, I was actually on a bus just like by myself, and I actually started writing on this platform called Medium, which I now use.
Yep.
And I wrote this thing called Tell Them You Love Them, and it was based around...
I've read that one.
Yeah, so it's based around like that day in particular, but I think sort of opening up the vulnerabilities of how people are feeling, and particularly the one here from Adelaide, taking her own life. Like, it was just... It hit home. And I've actually lost a couple of mates from that over the last couple of years as well, where it's just, we don't, particularly as males, but all across the board, we probably don't openly speak about our feelings enough as we probably should.
Oh, for sure.
And we don't tell people that are in our lives how much we do appreciate them when we should.
Yeah, for sure.
Or enough. So I wrote this piece it's called Tell Them You Love Them, that, and I thought to myself, like, am I writing this for me now, or am I writing this so that I can share it with people that might take something from this? Or
did it start as something, just something for you?
just something for
writing?
me, but then I thought, like, when I got back to the room, I thought, like, I showed my best mate, who he would be the first to admit is not the most vulnerable, not happy to really put himself out there as much. I showed him, and I thought, mate, what do you think of this? And he read it and was like, it's incredible. Like, you gotta show that, you gotta share that. We sat there and had a glass of red together and stuff afterwards, and it was just such a it was a really like emotional kind of time. But I just it was such a
Also, it's a way
I
of
don't even
like
know how to describe
a
it,
different
honestly.
way of like being able to express yourself
Yeah.
rather than just
I was so
like
nervous about sharing.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you talked about the footy stuff playing in front of different people, but like sharing that with a platform
yeah,
to people to read, to completely open up was that was one of the more nerve-wracking things that
Yeah,
I've
for
probably
sure.
done. And even still to this day when I put out anything publicly, I still shit myself before
yeah.
I share it.
Well,
Yeah.
it's the same thing. Like obviously I've only just started doing this podcast, but like you're my fourth guest, and it's like even before you rocked up, I'm like, fuck, I better make sure like I'm prepared. Like got to make sure everything's organised because like I've got no credentials. And no credentials at all in doing like any of this. So I know exactly what you mean. Like obviously like you've never been, I mean, you're not a quote unquote professional writer or anything. So like as soon as you're putting yourself out there with things like that, it's it's nerve wracking, man. Like
Yeah.
anything creative, whatever it be, whether like you're making clothes, whether you're making music, like
Yeah.
as
You're
soon
putting
as
yourself out there for criticism.
yeah, it's like until you actually put yourself out there with your own work, you're like,
Yeah,
fuck, like
know.
is this? And as much as you like to think as much as you like to think as much as you like to think you don't care about what people think, until you do that, it's like,
And-
but for sure.
And such, things like that are so sensitive at the time as well. It was kind of
Yeah.
like, is this actually going to resonate with people? Are people going to like think it's, with the wrong intentions?
Yeah.
And like we've both seen it, like what happens when things are trending and people all want to
Yeah.
jump on the bandwagon. But for me, it was never really about that. I think I wanted an opportunity to be able to express myself in a different forum to what I'd been known to express myself in before, which is obviously football. And I wanted to sort of break down a stereotype of, the typical male that it's, that doesn't talk about their feelings, isn't happy to be open and vulnerable. And I think that's really like sort of helped me with closer friendships that I've got in my life, where now people do the same thing to me and reciprocate that, which is so important. But yeah, it started with that piece, and then it sort of built from there, and it went from things that I wrote like for myself when I was in New York in like 2015, like I wrote like a bit of a roadmap of what I sort of wanted to get from myself. And then 2018, I did the same thing when I was in transit somewhere, just as like what I kind of wanted to drive myself to be, and then what I thought that through that I could help other people. Because I'm no expert. I'm like genuinely, same as you, I've got no credentials in any of this sort of stuff. It's just like what I've learned from the life that I've lived so far at 26.
How was it comparing the one you did from 2015 to 2018? Similarities? Or a lot
Yeah,
more
similarities.
differences,
I think I was a lot more naive about the world at that point
Yeah.
in time. And my life had shifted so dramatically. At 2015, I was still living in Melbourne. I think I had a long-term girlfriend at that point in time. Fast forward 3 years, I was living in Adelaide. I'd now gone overseas. I was single. Like it was just polar. I wasn't playing footy professionally anymore at that point either. So life had changed like so dramatically in the space of 3 years' time. And then even fast forwarding now to when I write now, it's like looking back on when I was writing when I was overseas, like what I thought my life might be in 3 years' time, and what it is. It's that's sort of why I do it as well, is because you get a good reference point to like what you've actually learned, like what you've actually been able to, how you've grown, what you've developed in.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I was gonna mention before as well. You talked a lot about like the mental health stuff. I don't know whether you know him or not, but we've just teamed up with him as a part of Devon Street. Jack Shepherd, he's doing a
21 Run Club.
21 Run Club.
I've seen that,
So definitely need to link you guys up in some sort of way. That'd be good.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've got a couple of friends. I've got mutual mates in some capacity. I don't really know Jack at all, but it's awesome. I mean, as many advocates as we can get in that space. Like, like everyone's had their mental health challenges, and I haven't, had the extent of what other people have had, but obviously through the feeling of failure of getting delisted and then moving over here and having a whole sort of life that you felt like you had planned out, then all of a sudden go, oh, well, we're changed. Like this has changed now. Like I went through some really like weird times during that stage.
Without, I mean, we can delve into it as much as we want, but like obviously like being delisted, like that's you're essentially, it's a public like
it's embarrassing
public sacking from your job. Like it's not every day that like I could lose my job at the rec centre and no one in the world can know, like no one in the world will know if I don't tell anyone. Whereas like if you're being delisted, like you're losing your job publicly. So the amount of like, the effect that can have on you, like you as a person, and just emotionally and just your overall mental well-being is like, that's why obviously it's such a big thing with like retiring athletes and athletes that obviously do lose their jobs and stuff. Like it's definitely a very important field that is obviously being talked about a lot more now. But yeah, it definitely needs to be talked about more.
I think as well, at that point in time, like, I remember when I got home from being delisted and I lied there and I was just staring at the ceiling thinking, fuck, like, what are my parents going to say? What are my mates going to say? But it was kind of like, it was weird because the first hour or two that I lied there, I was like, what if, like, what am I going to say to these people? Like, I've let them down.
Yeah, exactly.
But then after that, it was kind of like a feeling of relief. It kind of felt like a weight off my shoulders. And in a way, it kind of validated potentially just being in that environment as a professional athlete just wasn't what I wanted to do, or it didn't bring me as much fulfillment as I thought it was going to. So there's two trains of thought. There's obviously some people that can't recover from that and just obviously lose their sense of identity. And I felt like there was an opportunity for me to create a new identity.
Create a new one, yeah, go away. And
that's why I obviously came here as well to, like, I've got great mates in Melbourne, and like I'm very lucky that I've still got really good mates that are back there. But there's an opportunity to start fresh, just to like be who I kind of wanted to be myself. And that included, like I said, the writing kind of stuff was something that I probably never would have done if I had just stayed in my comfort zone and stayed in Melbourne. Like, I don't know if I ever would have explored it as much as I did. So yeah, just challenge myself to get out of my comfort zone a little bit, and then that's sort of what's come as a result.
Is the right? So would you, like, at the moment, or I guess like maybe looking towards the future, is the writing something that like you might want to make more a part of your future, or is it more of just like a hobby sort of thing? Or
it's hard because one of those, it's like football in a way. You can love something so much, but then once it's your job, will you still love it?
Yeah.
And I write based on feelings that I have at the time, or things that I feel like I can share, or things that I've learned.
Yeah.
If I had pressure on me to do that as part of a job, would I be able to do it as successfully as, or as, what I deem as successfully as what I'm doing it now? Probably not. Like, I don't know. I mean, if I was writing about something that I was truly passionate about, and obviously the stuff that I'm doing now with regards to, to what I wrote recently with regards to respect for women, all that kind of stuff, like, I'm passionate about that. Like, I'm passionate about making a difference in that space. Whereas if I was writing, I always wanted to do journalism when I was in high school, but would I be passionate about writing about football, or would I be passionate about writing about politics? Like, I don't really know if I would be. So,
well, I guess like, obviously, that your writing is like a really strong tool that you can use to help articulate the points that you want to get across. And then that can then lead to you discovering like what your passions, where passions may lie that you didn't think you might be not interested in. But does that sort of make sense without 100%. Really even saying it? Yeah. So like that leads into really well, like the most recent piece you wrote is called quote unquote Men We Must Be Better. Yep. Is that, so you wrote that piece, how long ago would it be now?
It probably would have been maybe, probably 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks ago, I think. Yeah. Yep.
So that's how we originally obviously got in contact. I reached out and just said like how much, or I think I like reshared like a part of what you wrote.
Yeah.
Just because it really made me realize I could just, even though I've never been a professional athlete or a professional footballer or whatever, but in terms of, I've always played football, and that is a common theme amongst sort of men, is like they grow up playing football for all of their lives, and they play amateurs until they're sometimes even 40 or even older. But yeah, so that was after, when you wrote that piece, that was after sort of it was international news because it happened in South London, I think it was.
Yep.
Sarah
Everard,
yeah.
Yep.
Excuse me for getting that wrong.
That's right.
Yeah, so for those that haven't read, obviously, your piece, do you want to sort of shed a bit of light on, I guess, like what actually triggered you to write that?
Yeah, I think, there was obviously the Sarah Everard, that was the first thing, like, I obviously read a fair bit into what had happened to her, and but the thing that was like the most concerning is, obviously that was so public because it was over in the UK and she'd gone missing and whatnot, but it was actually happening here in Adelaide too. There was a young lady by the name of like Jasmine Kerr,
Mosley or something?
Nah, she was actually she was employed, I think it might have been at Westpac or something, don't quote me on it, but I think that's might have been she had a restraining order put against one of her former colleagues, so she left work one day and then she was never seen again, and was buried up in the Flinders Ranges, which is just it shocked me, and I remember thinking at the time, like,
how can this happen?
And I guess as well, like I saw across all my social media platforms, you know, a lot of females that I follow and whatnot posting about how it's enough's enough. Like, we need to feel safe at night. You know, it's gone on for too long. Males need to change their behavior, all this kind of stuff. And I remember seeing it all come up, and I thought, there's every female that I know is posting about it, but there's no males talking about it at all.
Yeah.
And
I sort of just, sorry to interrupt, but like backtracking a little bit, you said that first piece you ever showed your mate, you were nervous.
Yeah.
How nervous? I mean, not to compare, but like,
I was honestly shitting myself.
Yeah, because even I was
yeah.
just going to say, comparing, you wrote that massive piece and shared it,
Yep.
but then I took a little like a few sentences from what you wrote and reshared it, and I was even like nervous to reshare that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that just really highlights, I guess, almost the issue.
And the thing is, like, we don't have any experience knowing what females go through on a regular basis. We have absolutely nothing to show for it. I think where I felt like it could be really positive from us as males was to spread a positive message. Not a positive message, my apologies, but to spread the message that enough is enough, and to start to change this narrative that we've always had, which is that women need to be more careful, because that's not the case. Men need to be better.
That's not the issue.
Exactly. And I think before I obviously wrote it, and I'm really lucky in my life. I have a mother who's, you know, like a best mate of mine now. Like, we had some troubles growing up, but like now that I'm a bit older and whatnot, I understand and appreciate obviously what she's done for me all growing up. But my sister, who's younger than I am, so I've got that, you know, sister in my life that's always been such a huge influence. She's another one of my best friends. But then also I've got 2 or 3 really close girl mates in my life. One's one of my best mates' girlfriend, and the other 2 I've been mates with for now sort of 3 or 4 years. And what I wrote initially, I sent to them to make sure, first of all, like, is this actually the right angle? Because I don't want this to seem like I'm making this at all about me, because it's not.
Yeah.
I've taken accountability for where I've made mistakes in the past, because I have. Like, I went to an all-boys high school. I played football in male-dominated areas. I worked in jobs that were male-dominated. So I'm absolutely not resistant to criticism, and I actually did cop some criticism from what I wrote. It was warranted, and I guess this is where my angle was. I feel like there was a lot of males that weren't prepared to voice their support for the issue in fear of having their own actions, like being held accountable, being held accountable for their own actions. So maybe they're not going, I don't want to post that because, I don't know if I really treated women with you know, the most amount of respect that I should have growing up, or, you know, when I was younger and stuff like that, which I completely understand that thought process, because you're nervous about being put on trial. Yeah. But the reality is, like, how we're going to inflict change is by owning our mistakes from the past and actually learning enough from them so that we can move forward and that we can be advocates and support, because everyone should be advocating for women to be able to feel safe at night, to be able to walk the streets, to not feel like their biggest fear could be getting abducted or kidnapped or raped or killed on the street by a male. You know, it just shouldn't be a concern, because I know from my perspective, I never ever grew up with that ideology in my head that could ever happen to me as a male. Yeah. So I guess I sent it to a few of my girl mates first to be like, you know, is this going to spread the right message? Because I don't want to. I'm happy to put myself out there and be like, hey, look, I've made mistakes, because I have. Yeah. But is this going to be, you know, everyone's got a platform, whether you've got 3 followers or 60,000 followers. Is this going to be a good message to spread across? And will people get something out of this? Will people look at this in a way? Because I knew from spreading what I was going to spread, there could be some females that would be really appreciative of it. But what I really wanted was my mates to reach out to me and be like, fuck, I never really thought of things like that, man. Like, I never really thought of that. Like, I've never really sympathized to put myself in a female's shoes to be like, oh, is this what happens? Like, is that actually what reality is like? Yeah. And that was the most positive thing about it, was mates reaching out to me and going, I never really considered this. Like, I never really considered that even a problem, or not a problem, but it wasn't even a first thought. So it was pretty eye-opening.
I mean, obviously, like, we didn't know each other till we met 2 days ago. Yeah. But, like, I feel like you would have had a lot of people reaching out to you in terms of, hey, mate, you would have had a lot of people reaching out to you in terms of, you know, people that you don't actually know and everything, because it was crazy. Like, what I was going to mention before, like, I had like, obviously how I mentioned, I reshared like a small part of what you wrote. And I honestly, I can't remember the exact number, but I think I had maybe like 20 or 30 people, half of them people I didn't really even know, just saying like not thank you, but like not thank you to me, but thank you for like helping spread the message.
Yeah.
Essentially, and I think that's an important thing. It's obviously you've covered most of it just like from what you said last, but it's important that we understand as males. That's the reason why. Like we're sharing that message not for us.
And we continue to be educated.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Continues to want to be educated by, because the unfortunate reality is that too many of us are happy to sort of bury our heads in the sand and pretend like it doesn't exist or it's not actually happening.
Oh, it's not me,
and
so
it's
I
not
don't
front
have
of
to worry
mind.
about
exactly.
it. Yeah.
And unfortunately, we've also, and I'm speaking generalistically, because unfortunately, the generalist male population would go, oh, I'm a good male. Like I wouldn't do that to a female. So what's like as long as I'm looking after my own backyard, then everyone else should look after theirs. It's like, no, well, how can you spread a positive message and influence so that this transcends down to the next generation of people? Because that's the key. You know, when I was doing research on while I was writing, you know, between 15 and 19, like males between 15 and 19 are the highest perpetrators of sexual assault, which was like shocking.
Unbelievable.
Like, I couldn't believe it.
That's what I had written here next. So I had the 3 facts that you wrote, or the three points that you wrote actually in your piece, and so not like obviously one of them was the majority of this is me quoting what you wrote, but the majority of sexual assault offenders recorded by police were male, 97%, aged between 15 and 19, and they had the highest offender rates of any age group. Like that is absurd.
And
like that's crazy. And I don't know. I feel like that probably leads in really well again in terms of what you've done in the last maybe 2 or 3 weeks. Like you've been into one school so far and spoke to a group of year 10 boys.
Year 11's part of their footy program at Blackwood High School. So
like
it's absolute target demographic. You know what I mean? Like that's like exactly where I really want to focus my attention. And like I said, what I wrote, obviously from a platform perspective, would have got people reading it that were, you know, my age, your age, probably from 20 and above. But for those who weren't familiar with it, like kids that are at school who might not have, you know, had a look at it at all, to go out there and to actually speak to them was actually really, really powerful. And that sort of now led to potentially going out to a few other schools, which, you know, like you know, I've said it before, I'm absolutely no expert on it, and I don't claim to be a messiah on the topic or anything like that, because unfortunately, like us as males, we haven't paid enough attention, and I think sometimes as males we try to make it more about us as opposed to about females. So what I really would like to continue to do is to continue to use whatever platform I have to educate from my mistakes and what I've learned, because I can't educate from a female's perspective. Only they know what they've had to live with. But if I can use my influence in any capacity to go, this is what I've learned in 26 years and what I've done wrong and what mistakes I've made, this is what you can learn from. Because they're going to make mistakes.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. So I've got here, like, I guess it's just me and you talking about, it's just you and I talking about it, but how do we change the behaviour? So obviously you had written in your piece, obviously 1, to stop objectifying women.
Yep.
And 2, to call out others for objectifying women, whether that be your best mate, whether it be your old man, whether it be whoever. You have to first understand what's going on, and then also, it takes courage to be able to do it. It takes so much courage.
And it's really interesting because I haven't told many people this, but I won't reveal sort of who it was. But I actually had an incident a couple of days after I'd posted what I did, where I heard something said in passing comment between a couple of friends of mine, and I remember hearing it, and I thought to myself,
that's the moment.
Like, this is it. Like, this is what I've literally written about. Like, I've got to, like, if I don't say anything, like, I'm just a genuine hypocrite. Yeah. Like, and I would not have been able to live with myself if I just didn't say anything. And I remember waiting. I heard it sort of in passing comment. And it was something along the lines of that a woman that he had spoken to was cranky about something, or wasn't really, giving him a lot of attention or whatever. And he said something along the lines of, "Oh, she must need a root." Yeah. And I remember hearing it, and I was like, oh my God, like,
it's like
I can't not say anything. Like
And
I
how-
have to say something.
and the thing-
And
like
I was
how-
shitting myself.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
more nervous about saying something than I was probably about what I wrote.
yeah,
And I remember, so I pulled him aside like probably about 20 minutes later, and we had a chat just about general things. And I was like, look, mate, just there's a quick one. Like, you probably saw what I wrote a couple of days ago about, respect for women, all that sort of stuff. I don't know whether you even thought about it, but you said something before that like really kind of like I need to say something. Like I think it's not on. And I recounted the quote to him, and he was like, oh yeah, like I didn't even think. Like, and that's the problem.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
it's just fucking ingrained.
We don't even think before
Yeah.
we speak about that kind of stuff. And he was like devastated.
Yeah,
like he
yeah.
was like, oh, I can't believe I said that. Like that's awful.
Yeah.
And it was like, but for me, it was such an enlightening moment where I was like, all right, that was really hard. Like,
And
that was really bloody hard.
It was the right thing to do.
But it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And by me doing that, maybe then next time he hears something that's said in passing comment,
Yep.
maybe he'll then do the same thing. And it's a domino effect. The more people
Exactly.
the more people can get talking about it, the better. So
Yep.
yeah, that was a really it was a nerve-wracking moment, man.
For
to be
sure.
honest.
And I look back like it is so tough. But then I'm sitting here saying it's so tough. But then when you're actually comparing it to the issue, it's like fucking like what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like what are you doing? Actually, it's not tough in any way, shape, or form when you're comparing it to the actual issue itself. So, no, I reckon that's great in terms of that. It's exactly what needs to be happening in terms of you going into schools, and obviously you're really you're the perfect. I might jinx you there, but you're an excellent role model in terms of how you're obviously targeting the young males in schools, and they're obviously football or aspiring footballers. So like you said, like I've just got written here in capital letters, like keep educating it. Like it's the only way to make it the norm. Like the only way you're gonna, I don't even know if this is a word, but like degrain the ingrained habits. Like
I think, and that's a thing
from early on.
100%. And like the speaking in front of like sort of adolescent males, like that's the biggest target demographic, because we're not going to change your 40 to 50-year-olds plus. Like they've had this ingrained in them since they were younger, and as much as we can try to educate them, like there's just, it's going to be a lot harder to change that. But what we can do is then change the future. Like, and I said this to the group that I was speaking to at Blackwood. I was like, like what kind of world do you want your potential daughters or your younger sisters or your girlfriends or your friends growing up in? Like, what sort of environment do you want them? Do you want them to be walking around the streets and feeling unsafe?
Yeah.
Do you want them to be nervous about walking past a group of males? Like,
yeah, exactly.
That's not what I want to stand for as well. And I think I suppose that's the sort of the nuts and bolts of sort of why I'm doing what I'm doing. And like I've been asked to speak in front of a school in a couple of months' time. It's like 200 and something students, and to be honest, like I'm absolutely shitting myself. Like I'm kind of now got to get to a point where it's like, what kind of presentation am I going to do? But I'm lucky from the school that I spoke to at Blackwood, I've got them to write down what they wanted to take out of the session, which has given me a really good basis and guideline now to be like, okay, this is what they actually want to learn. So
exactly.
Can now utilize that to sort of fuel future presentations and whatnot. So,
for sure. No, that's a great starting point for sure. That's about an hour, mate. In terms of like wrapping that up, I think we could keep going if we really wanted to. But just sort of in terms of wrapping that up, like I just had a thought then, and I'm like, when this eventually comes out, I'll be like, I'm gonna probably get to that point where I'm like, fuck, like it's the same thing as like when you were writing something. I'm like putting that out there, like, is it the right angle? But that's like the step you've got to take, because if nothing's being done, then like we're sitting here talking about it. We've got no credentials in it, but at the end of the day, like that's how things are going to progress. Yeah,
so use the influence on whatever sort of platform that you've got for good. I think that's the key driver. And like by doing this sort of stuff, by talking about it, by posting about it, it opens yourself and subjects you to criticism. But ultimately, like you've got to be a strong enough human person to go, okay, I've got to take ownership for any mistakes I've made in the past. But what I can do is I can control my behaviour now going forward. I can't change what's happened in the past, but I can control now what I'm going to do individually and what I'm going to call out in terms of my mates. So that's the most important message, I think.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah. So I guess wrapping that up, like. I'm very real eager to see what you're coming up with in the near future and the future after that. But yeah, I'll be here helping you, trying to push that message, and I don't know, we could probably like work out something a little bit more permanent in terms of what we can do to help push it.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thanks so much for your time, mate. It's been good, really good. It's went really well.
Yep.
And good luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.